Consulting gave me discipline around execution and scale. Philanthropy gave me understanding of systems and processes, but also understanding of inequities. Government gave me experience in the working with people and be accountable to the people and to the public. And all of those things together, we keep missing the boat. We keep missing the moment. And so it's not crazy, at least for me, to think that in a new era where you have the top potentially 1% controlling everything in the world, but not necessarily needing people to do things for them, because you have AI with robotics, but yet because they're human beings who, like all human beings, want to live forever. And I can see them really having us be there for our body parts. We will likely have to sacrifice a couple of generations, but it has to be intentional.
So how we break this cycle?
We can begin to develop a new set of leaders. Our colleagues who are thinking about Combit, we need to think about our community in a broader sense and the empowerment of our community and our ability to affect change ourselves.
Unfortunately, there is almost no signs of progress to show for those years of protest. What do you think went wrong?
Of course, they were accused of all kinds of, and I knew they were not taking money from anybody, but you needed to tell people, right? And you can't sustain a movement where you think you are the movement.
Policy analysis and policy making, one of the things that you learn is that you have to balance. You can't have everything.
There's a mentality in activism. It's war, right? It's I win or you lose, or you lose, I win. Advocates are more likely to understand the policy-making process, because advocates have to engage with the system. Activists don't want to engage the system. They just want to overthrow the system. That's kind of the biggest challenge that I'm facing, because I feel like I've been at this for the last 20, 25 years, and I'm in the same place. Good leaders will never start first. As a young person, I think if you're just starting out in life, you're just starting out in your career, listen. The second thing I'll say is that
Greetings, Johnny, and welcome to Meeting the Moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be with you today.
Pleasure to have you as well. I will give a very brief introduction of who you are. Please feel free to add anything because mine is very succinct. You are a multidisciplinary leader with roles in the public sector, expertise in international development, extensive experience in nonprofit management, as well as an entrepreneur. You are an advocate for social justice and transformative change, leveraging over 30 years of experience, global perspective to connect communities and cultures. Your contribution and achievements have made you a leading voice in Haitian affairs and within the Haitian diaspora. Some of your past roles include leadership positions at Accenture and the Robin Hood Foundation, founder of Black Pearl Cafe, Chief of Staff or Deputy Chief of Staff at the Ministry of Planning and External Cooperation in Haiti, Executive Director of the Haitian Center for Leadership and Excellence, and you currently serve as the Executive Director at the Mayor's Office for Nonprofit Services in New York. You are an active member of your community and serves on the boards of many important organizations, including the think tank Haiti Policy House. I suppose the first question to start with is, how has your multidisciplinary background enabled you to become an effective leader?
Well, Isnal, thank you for this wonderful introduction. One quick update in terms of my positions is that now I am the Senior Vice President of the Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise group within New York City EDC, which is the Economic Development Corporation. So I switched over from the mayor's office to this new role, but everything else remains the same.
Congratulations.
Nonetheless, I appreciate the question. Really, it is, for me, a journey that has been quite interesting. It's a journey that has sharpened different muscles that I have. Consulting gave me discipline around execution and scale. Philanthropy gave me understanding of systems and processes, but also understanding of inequities. Government gave me experience in the working with people and be accountable to the people and to the public. And all of those things together really taught me how to listen, how to bring different groups together, unlikely partners together, and to build bridges between and across sectors. So this really has been central to my leadership style, and it's a style that I hope will continue to grow as I engage with other people.
Hmm. That's quite interesting. We'll have a chance to dive into all of that a little bit later. But first, I would like to understand what has shaped you as a leader. So you moved from Haiti at a very young age. You finished high school in the U.S. and then you went on to get a bachelor's degree in business administration. Then you went on to get your master's degree in international affairs. What were your early career goals?
I mean, I think like most young Haitians, I wanted to be in business. I wanted to be, successful in business. But after spending a number of years in the private sector and on the side, I was volunteering with different local organizations. I realized that really my deepest motivation was not necessarily an financial gain, uh, although those are important, but really was in social impact. And so as I left Accenture and move into philanthropy, I decided to get my master's in international affairs. And that was really a strategic decision on my part because throughout those choices, one end goal that I had was to go back to Haiti and be able to share my experiences. So these kind of work gave me the technical grounding to navigate policy and development, but also position me for a shift, which eventually happened for me to the public sector.
Hmm. So, was there a specific moment that, like, okay, at that moment you realized that you needed to like switch, or it was like you knew that and you just waited for the transition to occur naturally?
Yeah, a lot of them happen naturally, but nothing is really as organic and naturally as we think, right? I mean, it's really about putting yourself in the spaces for the opportunities to show up, right? When I switched
Yeah.
from consulting at Accenture to philanthropy, it happened because I was volunteering with a nonprofit that was receiving funding from the Robin Hood Foundation. And so it was a natural sort of thing that where I was offered the opportunity to join the foundation and help them think about their strategic planning. And so that kind of happened naturally, but it would not have happened naturally had I not been involved. But I think to get to your core question, for me, one defining moment is probably 2010 when the earthquake happened. And at that moment, really, that I would say it shifted my life from the US and the work that I was doing onto going back to Haiti. That was really a transformative moment for me.
So at that time, you already left Accenture. You're working with the Robin Hood Foundation, and then the earthquake happened, and then so it was like, okay, that was the time you needed to fully focus on social justice and leave like business consulting in altogether.
It was a little bit after that, right? So I did
Right.
Accenture, left Accenture, went to the Robin Hood Foundation, left the Robin Hood Foundation, started my consulting practice, opened up a cafe up in Harlem that I call the Black Pearl, La Perle Noire, which was a sort of a merging of living in the Black Mecca of Harlem, but also being
Yeah.
from Haiti. And so I kind of merged the two and called that coffee shop the Black Pearl. And while I was there, I got a call from a headhunter who was, there was a president of a larger foundation, international foundation called Atlantic Philanthropies, and they needed someone who had experience both in consulting as well as philanthropy to work with the new presidents in the president's office. So I was at Atlantic Philanthropies working for the president and doing grant making for the founder and utilizing my skills from Accenture in terms of process redesign and those kinds of things. And that's when I was there and the earthquake happened. And immediately, really, my mom was in Haiti at the time. So obviously I was in Haiti 2 days after through the Dominican Republic. And that's when I realized, coming back from Haiti after the earthquake, that I had decided that I was going to leave my job at Atlantic Philanthropies, and move to Haiti to be part of what I think many others believed were, it's a time there was going to be a real opportunity for transformation and change in Haiti.
Hmm, okay. That is interesting. I mean, at the time I was still in Haiti when the earthquake happened. I should say that I'm Haitian. Johnny as well is Haitian. So, um, well, how, what exactly, if you could say like one, two, three things from your business consulting experience that were critical for you in your social advocacy work or civic engagement, civic leadership work? I know you mentioned being accountable to client, being very strategic in your decisions, driven by results, because that's what it is as well in the private sector. But do you have any specific examples that you could give? Okay, this is one, two, three things.
Uh, so for me, I think as I think about my experience at Accenture, obviously you are accountable to a client that was paying the firm a lot of money and very sort of, as you said, result driven. When I moved from Accenture into philanthropy, it really sort of changed to look at it from much more of a social justice. But the real examples I could give you is sort of seeing how, like at Accenture, for example, seeing how your network really is the way in which you kind of expand in your professional development within the philanthropic sector. I also realized that it was exactly the same, right? So the organizations that were able to get grants are the ones who had the right network, who were able to connect with the right people within the foundation and were invited to propose a project, an idea that they had. So it really kind of, all of it is similar. We use different languages, but nonetheless, it was exactly the same. And another example is going to Haiti, the ability to work with folks that were in the rural areas was grounded in work that we were doing within one foundation that I was working at. And so I saw that you needed to build relationship with people in order for them to build trust, and allow you to maybe have some influence in terms of the things that they did in their lives. And so these are things that were cut across different
Yeah.
sectors, from the private sector to philanthropy to a public sector. But nonetheless, there was a thread, I think, that I could find and I can see that I pulled on to help me be successful in the work that I was doing.
And so, in a word, like stakeholder management, like partnership building and stuff like that, they were all critical.
Exactly. Relationship management, those things are really important. And building a network is extremely important in whatever field of work that you're doing. You can't really succeed on your own. You really have to make sure you build a network of people who are in the same field, but also interested in going in the same direction.
Awesome, awesome. Um, so 2010, you made the switch to social justice, civic engagement, and more, especially in Haiti. Um, since I've known you, I think I really started to know you and follow your work around 2015. But since that time, you have been a vocal advocate for better governance in Haiti, as well as political and economic integration of the diaspora. And you constantly convey a message of hope, possibility. However, recently I read one of the articles that you published called Bald, Black, and My Hair is on Fire, in which the tone seems to have shifted a little bit. In reading that article, I feel like you sounded worried and you expressed less hope, and it sounded like as well a final call for awakening on the part of the Haitians in Haiti. So, what is keeping you up at night these days?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm always full of hope. I'm always full of hope because that's the only thing that can keep me going, this passion that I have for Haiti. And sometimes I think that hope can present itself in language that seems to be dire. And I believe that we are in a dire moment. But let me just back up and say that it's important to say that to understand my writing, you have to understand my really, really deep belief in human agency and human potential. Though we all may have different gifts and talents, and those may show up at different times, we all have potentials. That is central to everything that I believe. I believe in our capacity to do for ourselves. And so that put me at odds sometimes with many of my contemporaries. And sometimes I'm misunderstood, but I think it's always the onus is on the writer to be as clear as possible. So what keeps me up at night is the sense that we have this potential, both as a people and as a nation, and we keep missing the boat. We keep missing the moment. And I believe that we are at another tipping point where we may be missing yet another historic moment, right? There has been multiple revolution, the industrial revolution, the first industrial revolution, the second revolution, the third. We are in the fourth revolution right now with technology and in the internet, artificial intelligence. And as we move more towards robotics into sort of the physical world, and I truly believe that, like many people, and I may be influenced by writers that I'm following, but I think that we all expect that AI is going to reshape the global economy, and the conversion of AI and robotics is going to be transformative for mankind, right? And so when you have a place like Haiti, which has so much potential and yet has missed so much of the really major moment in history in terms of the industrial revolutions, the many revolutions that have happened. This particular moment is really scary because what it does for me, at least as I was thinking about it, is that it could potentially lock us into a permanent state. I don't know if you've watched these sci-fi movies where you have sort of like the extraterrestrial bodies that come and they use our bodies to kind of like get energy, but we're really just there. And in some ways, those movies are if you kind of push your mind, they really give you a sense of this is how the world has functioned. They're not creating anything new, right? I mean, this is the whole idea of imperialism and colonialism. It's essentially using our bodies as tools of production, right? And so I believe that if we let this particular revolution pass us by, we can be in a permanent state of Haitians essentially serving as tools for production, right? I mean, we know of what's happening in our country right now. You have a lot of human trafficking, you have a lot of organ trafficking. And so it's not crazy, at least for me, to think that in a new era where you have the top potentially 1% controlling everything in the world, but not necessarily needing people to do things for them, right? Because you have AI with robotics. But yet, because they're human beings who, like all human beings, want to live forever. And I can see them really sort of having us be there for our body parts, right? They need us for our livers, for our hearts, and just basically we're there to, for replacement parts, essentially. And I know that it sounds like really extreme, but I really do think that missing this particular revolution, and I don't think we can do it in like a decade or 2 decades, but we must start. And I don't think we even starting at even like the starting lane of having energy, electricity, roads, like basic things that we need to do the leap are not even in place. And so I wanted to kind of share an image that is for me what is possible, but also where we could end up very easily, and put it in the context of what's happening now, because everybody's talking about the fact that human trafficking is a major problem in Haiti. It has always been. It's been done by the state. We sell our people to Cuba to cut sugarcane. We sold them to the Dominican Republic to cut sugar. This is common for us. And now with the gangs, they are, trafficking in not both in human, in organ. And so it's just right there. And so I wanted to really capture people's imagination and thinking about missing the moment and finding ourselves in a permanent stature of being replacement parts.
That is deep. And I mean, when I was reading that article, it took me a while to really like process it. But at the same time, I remember like this is not really new. The fact that Haiti is onward to miss that other important historical moment, it's not like it puts the people in a position because at this current moment, they are already like what they can achieve for themselves is already very, very low. Like when you compare it to other people, like the Dominicans or to like, but anywhere else in the world, it's already hard for them to find some way to be helpful to themselves. And when you get to a point where even those who were more skillful are becoming less useful, then it opens the door like for those who are already less skillful to be even less useful to themselves. I don't know if I make sense, but I'm reading your article and it's like
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
gap is widened.
Yep. Yep. No,
So
absolutely. This is exactly what I'm concerned about, right? I mean, I think we romanticize a lot of things about our society. We romanticize, I'm writing a piece about rice right now because I think we romanticize rice. And I think, I'm writing it from the perspective that rice has limited our ability to reimagine Haiti because we're having this constant debate about the Clinton and how they destroyed our rice. And when rice was never a staple for Haitians, right? But we get locked into these limited sort of view of how the world operates. And so, yes, I am very concerned. And this is what I really wanted to sort of put forward in the article because we can certainly find that, 60-70% of the population that we were romanticizing going back to agriculture, which is important, right? But there's got to be more to the story. And no one is thinking about what that more is. Our leaders are not thinking about what the more is. So the transition needs to happen. We will likely have to sacrifice a couple of generation, but it has to be intentional. We can't leap from where we are now into the fourth industrial revolution. Things have to happen in between, and people have to make sacrifices in between. People do have to have the ability to feed themselves. Agriculture could be an important component, but it has to be an important component that builds towards something else. That means, you know, I took some courses in South Korea, Yongnam University, and they shared with us how during the famine years of South Korea, South Korean volunteered to South Korea was trying to borrow money and no one would lend them money because they were too poor. They were behind Haiti actually at the time. And South Korean citizens volunteered to go work in Germany after the Second World War to help rebuild Germany, right? Knowing that a good portion of their revenue would be used to repay the loan that South Korea had taken. So you had a group of people who said, we're going to sacrifice ourselves, right? For the purpose of helping our country find the financial resources, the money that it needed to build itself. And so that is okay, right? We need to kind of get to a place where we say, yes, there is a generation of people that is going to be sacrificed. Probably this generation, not mine, probably your generation, in the generation after you, potentially the one after that. But there's got to be a vision that we're working towards so that the fourth generation, right, your grandchildren, are not exactly in the exact same position as three generations back. And so that's really why I don't want us to get locked into something where we have not thought about our own choices and alternatives.
Interesting. So I'm hearing we need agency, we need forethought, like planning, but we also need a great deal of selflessness. And in your article, you mentioned how Haitian politicians or clinging to power, but also like the economic elite. And on a short term view, pursuing short term advantages. Why, in your opinion, do some leaders have difficulty recognizing the need for change and taking advantage of windows of opportunities when they arrive?
That is a complicated question for us because we are a very complicated society. And often we don't think about the complication that exists within our society. First of all, if you go back to Haiti, we are a people that is made up of a lot of people, right? I mean, the way that the French control, they were, it was like 10-1 or 20-1, right, between enslaved people and those slave masters. They kind of took people from different parts of Africa, from different tribes, and put them together because they knew they had different language, different customs, different everything, right? So you take that as the root of how we started. And then you then got a second layer of division between those who were affranchis and those who, were Bosal. And then you have another layer of the people who were the descendant of sort of like the children of the former enslavers who saw themselves as the natural heir of the country. And then you moved into the more modern era of sort of the Arabs that became the groups that sort of manage or took over post Duvalier, well, post 1935, really post the occupation, because the Americans really was the one that begun to kind of push the Arab community up against the black community, including those who were of mixed heritage, right? So back in the days, you have sort of those who were of French heritage, but then you have after World War II, those who were from Germany. So you have a great mix of people in Haiti, right? The difference is that quite often what happens in our society is that there was never a cohesiveness in that society. And so Haiti, you'll go to parts of Port-au-Prince, you go in Pétionville, and then you have enclave. You have people who intermarry. And so there was never these kind of uh, perception of people seeing themselves totally as Haitians, right? If you look next door, you have Abinader, who is of Arab descent, who is more Dominican than Dominicans. You don't have that in Haiti. You don't have any of the people who control the economy who see themselves as more Haitians than Haitians in terms of I want to make this place the best place that it can be out of pride, right? And so you also have at the same time people who do understand. It's not that the politicians sometimes of the elite, the economic, the intellectual of political elite, it's not that they don't understand, but there is the human factor where people are in many ways often selfish and they know what's at stake, but yet they want to cling to their immediate advantages and they fear any changes, however big or small the sacrifice may be. And so they're unwilling to pay that price. They would rather be, what do they call it? There's a saying, big fish in a small bowl rather than the big fish in a big bowl, where there's a lot more room, a lot more opportunities, a lot more ways for them to make more money. In fact, the people who are the elite have the advantage. And if they grew the economy, they would still have the advantage because they're so far ahead. But they're thinking small. They're thinking that I have control over this. If it expand, I might lose it, right? So I'm not going to chance um, losing that control. I'm not going to chance sacrificing the control that I have, the power that I have. And then you have finally some leaders who simply don't know, right? And unfortunately, they don't know, but they also don't have the humility to either ask or to have people around them, surround themselves with people that have the experiences and the skills and the ability to advise them. So it's a real complicated set of issues, but ultimately it is about believing in the place, right? It is believing in the place that you're in and having the agency and believing that this is the place that I want to make the best place possible. And that's part of, you see that in the mindset of people. Somebody they come to power, they build a road, in their where they live in their area, and they build it for about 100 meters, 100 just in front of their house. They don't even want to build it like for the entire, you know, their entire community to get to their house. As long as they just have it in front, like 100 meters left, 100 meters right, they're good to go. It's that limited mindset that people have, that they don't see beyond that 200 meters, that puts us in the situation that we're in today.
Now, the question is, I mean, I'm speaking more for like the younger generation. It's good that, you see what's not working. It's short-termism. It's this
Mm-hmm.
selfishness, and the fact that we don't they don't believe in the possibility for or expanding the cake so that more people, including themselves,
Mm-hmm.
can have more, because as you said, they already have a leg up. They
The
will
biggest
continue
slice,
to have
even.
it. So how do we break this? How we break this cycle? I mean, you don't have to have the answer, but like based on your experience, what have you seen in other places that work that could potentially work there as well?
Well, for me, I think what I see is, and this is where I want to invest, is both continue to make the argument. I get really sometimes frustrated with returning to the same arguments. As a matter of fact, I'm writing the piece about rice because I had a conversation with somebody last week, and it was all about what the Clinton did, and I'm like, okay, fair enough. Yes, the Clinton did X, Y, Z. I want to explain to you that number one, Haiti was never the main staple for us. Number two, the reduction in rice production did not come only because of Clinton. It started really under Duvalier, who begun to kind of suppress the people in the rural areas because that's where the energy and the movements were. It was pushed further by Baby Doug Duvalier, who centralized even more of the state's capacity in the capital and give a power to the people who had to open factories and those kinds of things because they were in Port-au-Prince. So we have to continue to make the argument. We have to continue to educate. I find it extremely frustrating and challenging because people are not interested often in understanding or interested in history. I think the another piece that I started drafting that I have not completed, that is like the impact of the internet, particularly of social media on Haiti, where we are people who we like to sort of hearsay and take it to the nth level. But making the case is the first place to go. The second, so education is important. The second is that I think there are a group of people that I'm never going to be able to influence how they think about it. And so I need to focus on those who are more open-minded. So that's why I continue to be involved in organizations in Haiti that are about leadership transformation. So being part and a member of the Haitian Center for Leadership and Excellence is part of the work that I believe I have to do to ensure that we can begin to develop a new set of leaders. Our colleagues who are thinking about the, Combit, right? It's an important sort of mindset and narrative that we need to have so that we can think about our community in a broader sense and the empowerment of our community and our ability to affect change ourselves, right? So the combitism is something that I really support. So there's a whole bunch of very young people who are now very engaged in the Combit movement. And so these are things that I want to continue to support. And then I want to continue support to advocate, right? Because I think that in as much as I don't want international community in Haiti's affairs, we invite them often in our affairs. So if that's going to happen, I want to leverage the positive sides of things like human rights, right? As a platform for me to push transformation in Haiti. And so I'm going to leverage the ability to kind of say, I'm going to advocate for change in Haiti to ensure that there is good elections. There's a respect for the rule of law. So those are things that are not Western. They're not American. They're not French. They're basic human values that people across the world aspire to, right?
Yeah.
And quite often we kind of misunderstand those things and we reject them because of how they were brought to us. Haitians tend to reject the rules because, and that's understandable because historically the rules have been used to oppress and suppress and exclude. So I get it. But we need to make the case to help people understand that these values are human values. They are values. I wrote a piece about sort of the Africanness, right? Of what we think about democracy and making the case for democracy. It's not an American value. It was there in Africa. We had those already. We had the king didn't just make decision by himself. He had elders around him to help make decision. He didn't just decide to go to war. So we kind of forgot our history, or in many instances we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think continuing to help people understand that at the root of it, this is who we are. We are people from great kingdoms with a great history. Maybe we'll begin to change people's minds. So that's where I want to start.
This is very important, and I think this is definitely a good place to start. I also read that article about democracy and the like. It's not a Western, it's not an American or French thing. Is actually African, and we are from Africa and parts. And even, I mean, I don't know, like La Coupe in Haiti, we in many places in Haiti, you don't see any sign of the state. It's the people self-governing, and they make decisions on council basis. And when there is an elder that says something, it's respected. So I think, as you said, it's a lack of grounding in history, but also the temptation to go fast. I also hear you say to break this cycle, we definitely need more education, not just school, but really about leadership, about what it means to be a leader, about what it means to be a human, and also empowerment, empowering others to reach and empower other folks so that they can together achieve more stuff collectively. And I had the chance to participate in activities with the Haitian Center of Leadership and Excellence. And I can testify that this is one of the things that we preach a lot. And I think one of the things that this crisis has done, which is positive, is creating that like critical mass. I know now there is enough young Haitians interested in politics. There is enough young Haitians who want to engage in politics. There is enough Haitians, especially young people, that want to know more and want to know how they can engage more. And between 2018 and 2021, a series of large anti-corruption protests occurred in Haiti, and it was largely because of that education process. And unfortunately, I would say like those protests, not only anti-corruption, but also at some point they turn into like asking for better governance, asking for systemic change. And many compared that period to the Arab Spring, where a lot of anti-corruption, anti-systemic protests, and they have some degree of success. But in Haiti, unfortunately, there is little, almost no signs of progress to show for those years of protests, those years of mobilization. What do you think went wrong?
Um, I think that for many of those movements, whether if we were to take some more contemporary time, um, No Pap Domi, to more recent, the Montana Accord, I think that there's often a degree of hubris. And what I mean by that, I think these movements always start really from a good place, and they've actually achieved quite a bit. I think what has happened, and I've said this to the people in both movements, but particularly the people in the Montana Accord, we need to understand that and I talked about this earlier in terms of the existing fracture that of our society. We are operating from a place of deficit and a huge deficit of trust. And so what that requires is extra effort in transparency. You take Nupabdomi. Of course, they were accused of all kinds of, and I knew they were not taking money from anybody, right? But you needed to tell people, right? Affirmatively, this is what we're doing. This is how we're getting our money. And there should be, if I'll take one example that's actually really helpful. So if you take, for example, Commissaire Muscadet, who is in the department, right? He's very open about, look, the people from if it wasn't from people in the diaspora community who support me, who sends money to me, like my movement would not be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to go the extra mile in terms of transparency. And I think as soon as those movement, and I understand the instinct to kind of want to keep the movement insulated, to protect it, because you don't want to have too many people in.
Yeah.
And that's understandable and that's fine. But it also means that the more insular you are, the more transparent you need to be, because people are going to start questioning how a decision being made. As soon as something happened, the first question the Haitian is going to ask, there's money. He gave somebody some money.
Yeah.
And you need to know that. Like, it's not a surprise. Like, this is for every single movement. That's the same question. So to let that question creep up without you having taken the steps necessary to clarify it, it's an unforced error that they all made. That's the first one. The second, I think, is a lot of these movements are movements that have started in urban areas. And unlike other places in the Arab Springs that I don't know, I mean, I've read about them, but I don't know sort of the deep rootedness of those societies. Every movement that have ever really worked in Haiti have been anchored in the rural area. And if you take whether it is from the Papdomi to the Montana Accord, well, the Montana Accord made some slight effort to engage people representative from the rural areas, but you didn't see the movement ever picking up any steam in the rural parts of Haiti.
Yeah.
When you leave Port-au-Prince, and you go to Cap-Haïtien, you go to Leka, you go to Jérémie, you ask people, oh, there's this thing called Montana. They're like, who? What? What is it? Like, people just literally don't know what you're talking about. And the backbone of the country is really anchored in the rural areas. So I think those movements failed because they failed to be rooted in the Haitian center, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the centers that can sustain them. So I would say that those are the two reasons that I would give as to why the movements that have started and those are the good movements. There have been other movements, Moïse Jean-Charles and others have started movement, but they're really kind of like the fake movement in order to, to gain power in order to squeeze the state to get more money or whatever it is. So I don't think about those in that sort of really organic movements that want to see transformation. But those people who have really I wrote about, the Montana to say that these people, when they first started, these people were heroes. I wrote that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got to the point where I would not even go to their meetings because there was a level of arrogance. They felt that they were so close to power that they didn't need to talk to people anymore.
Mm.
And in fact, if you remember this, there was a point at which there was a huge brouhaha because one of the spokesperson of the Montana Accord went on the radio and said something. And then a member of the board came on the radio right after him to say, we never discussed this. This is a decision that 3 people made by themselves. They never check with us. They never check with the board about this decision that they're making. And you can't sustain a movement where you think you are the movement. And so you take it on your own to make certain decision. And then you have people calling you out. So those are the kinds of things that after a while, I stopped attending because we met with them. I met with them. I brought people to the table because I felt like the diaspora could play a role, could support them, could financially support them. And then they just never came back and never cared. And I was like, okay, so I see where the movement is going and good luck. And they are where they are now. But it's unfortunate because, they could have been something, it could have been something different, but you know, we sort of redo the exact same things that we've done in the past. And then again, it's the same people that are doing the same thing. So I guess I should not have expected anything different.
Um, I mean, I hear you, and I wanted to say, like, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is the fact that people didn't trust that they could do it, and all of a sudden they believed that they had been taking money from supposedly corrupt people. And to me, it sounds like that's also because we do not have this culture of taking things on our own, doing things on our own. We don't have that, what we call agency. And that's why, and whenever someone is trying to do something, you already believe that it is acting on behalf of someone more powerful than them, because
Mm-hmm.
naturally we do not have that in our vein. And then you said that
Yeah.
it's being too close to power shouldn't make you feel that you don't want to talk to people anymore. And it's the lack of humility. And a lot of times good movements really fail because at some point, someone within the group believed that they had outpaced the rest and they can carry it on by themselves. But I've never thought about the fact that because those movements were also urban, and a lot of the times really successful movements have been from the countryside. But one of the things that I always put on the table, what that's at least that's one way I've understood it, is those people, they are advocates. And sometimes advocates fail to recognize when it's time to policy making, to switch from advocacy
Mm-hmm.
into policy making. And like advocates, as we need everything right now at once. In policy making, one of the things that you learn is that you have to balance. It's a negotiations. You will lose, you will win. You can't have everything, and you also need to manage the different interests. And because they are advocates and they wanted to push you with that advocacy spirit, when it was time, let's say at the end of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, when there were more people, like, you want to support you, but you can't have everything that you're asking for. And in fact, at some point, they became like an irritant because people didn't want to talk to them. I mean, it doesn't have to be true, but at least that was the narrative. And being someone who
Mm-hmm.
have been
Mm-hmm.
both on the policy and advocacy side, where do you think advocacy and policy making can cohabitate?
Yeah. Well, so I would say a lot of the people in Haiti who are part of these kinds of movement are not just advocate. I would go further and say they're activists. And there's a mentality in activism. Like it's war, right? It's not, there's no, it's I win, or you lose, I win, right? There's no in between. The activists are really all about, it's all or nothing. And we need activists. We need to have activists. You need to have people. You would not have a Martin Luther King without a Malcolm X. You need to have somebody that's pushing on the extreme, somebody that can sit and negotiate, right? So I would say Martin Luther King was an advocate. He was not necessarily, although in the latter part of his life, he began to start shifting to becoming more of an activist, but he was an advocate. Whereas conversely, Malcolm X started out as an activist. right? In the latter part of his
Mhm.
life, he began to shift to become an advocate. I make the distinction because I think advocates are more likely to understand the policy making process because they engage. Advocates have to engage with the system. Activists don't want to engage the system; they just want to overthrow the system, right? We just want to get rid of it. Advocates will engage, and there's always tension between the two, right? From Reconstruction time till now, right? And so, as you said, advocacy and policy making requires negotiation. It requires, first of all, it requires analysis, but it requires negotiation. It requires sequencing. It requires
Mhm.
compromise. But too often, everyone still sort of acted like activists and just demand everything right now. For me, advocacy in policy making is just a lever for and you need both. So the best practice really is for advocates to remain close to policy making processes, and to understand that there is urgency, but that there's got to be a combination, a cohabitation between our ultimate vision of where we need to get to. That vision has to be very clear, but an openness to moving through the sequence of making things happen, right? And sometimes the sequence may be that some things has to be completely thrown out the door, but you
Mhm.
understand what are the risks, the up and downside of doing that, and where do you need to back off so that you don't lose it all, right? If you take,
Yeah.
you know, the current administration and the previous administration, who was very timid about doing certain things because they didn't want to kind of sort of overthrow the system as it is, and then you have somebody who just come in and it's like, well, I'm just overthrowing the system, and then we realize, oh my God, we could have overthrown the system. Like the system is not that strong. It's so easy to throw off balance. But I think for policy making, their policymakers have to be connected to advocates and activists. They're really sort of the glue, make things happen, and none of which could be successful. An activist can't be successful if they don't have the folks who are advocating, and the advocates won't be successful without the policymakers. And the
Mhm.
reverse is true, right? So it's just like, I don't know if I have a real answer in terms of how do you really, in policymaking side for me, I kind of think about ideas, but those ideas have to be rooted in what people advocate for and ensuring that they respond to the demand of people. And so that's kind of
Mhm.
how I kind of balance what I think is a good idea from a policy making in the process of making a policy choice. How does it weigh against what my advocates are asking for? What is their breaking points? And what would put them in a situation where it's going to be now up to the activists to just break everything up?
I see. Well, I definitely agree because about sequencing, and that's one of the things that I just wish that they had done it differently. This part, I would like to draw some lessons based on your experience. I was reading a report recently of business leaders answering a few questions about the state of leadership or business leadership during this time of global uncertainty and the war for talent. And then there was a line that says, no company can outperform its leadership. And I was like, that's right. And I was like, this is also the same for a country. No country can outperform its elite. And I then remember reading, I was listening actually to an interview by Roger Ferguson, who was the vice chair of the Federal Reserve System, explaining what he had learned during the 9/11 crisis when he had to keep the US and the world's financial system afloat because he was the only governor in Washington, D.C., and he had to manage the crisis and keep the financial world together. So, one of the things that he mentioned, actually, his number one lesson is that leaders must have technical capacity, they must have expertise. And in that way, I'm trying to see, like, for those who aspire to have an impact, what are some lessons, especially like as a bridge builder? How does one become a bridge builder? What is the importance of technical capacities? Like, young people, we want to do a lot of things, but What do you think about taking time to learn, either in school or from other people?
Yeah, I think you've already hit on the answer, so I'll make it very quick. I mean, for me, bridge building is really about listening. It's really about a willingness to get across to the other side and understand the other side.
Mhm.
It's about finding common ground. It's about solutions that create space for everybody. I am often again at odd with many of my contemporaries because again, believing in the dignity of people and the agency of people, all people, I cannot, as someone who's fighting for my right and also at the same time want to oppress somebody else because of their sexual orientation, because of
Mhm.
XYZ, right? I have to truly believe that we are all made in the image of God. And so I respect that God made each of us different. That's the beauty of it, right? And so
Yeah.
that rootedness and human dignity really allows me to listen. I don't have to agree,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's part of the thing. I don't have to agree, but I have to be willing to listen. And what I have found is that I may not necessarily, it may not necessarily be my choice, but I can understand and respect somebody else's choice. And so I think for me, a bridge builder is one who listens and be willing to walk across and meet the other people in the middle of that bridge.
Awesome. Are there any particular challenge, like set of challenges that you have dealt with that have influenced your leadership or you as a person?
I mean, life challenges certainly certainly influences sort of the choices and where I go. But I think that for me as someone who particularly today, and when I mean today, I mean in the time that we're in, I'm extremely frustrated by the slow pace of change in Haiti. And I understand as someone who worked in government for quite some time that progress really does require patience. And I talked about earlier, sort of the activists and advocates, and um, but surely the challenge for me is the balance of urgency and patience.
Mhm.
That's kind of the biggest challenge that I'm facing because I feel like, I've been at this, I don't know, for the last, 20, 25 years, and I'm in the same place. At least it feels like I'm in the same place. I'm having the same conversation. I'm
Mm.
explaining the same thing. I'm giving people facts that they're unwilling to check. They come to the table and tell me some ridiculous thing, and I'm like, okay, I respect that. Can you support what you just said? And they're not interested in that. They just have an opinion. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, here's the fact. Can you go check it out? They're not interested in that either. So, so I find that like I'm really frustrated and I have to go back and sometimes stop and disengage and then come back to the table. But like that sense of the slowness of change, the unwillingness of us to take ownership and responsibility for ourselves, and for me, the urgency of now, as has been written, the urgency of now, particularly as a Black man here in America, an immigrant, I feel a real urgency to fix home because that's the place that if they ship me out, they're gonna send me to, and it has to be a
Mhm.
place where I can live.
I
So that's
totally
the that's
agree.
my notable challenge.
Totally agree. You've worked in the private sector, government, philanthropy. For young people right now who are looking to carve out a career where they can have an impact, a positive impact on as many people as possible, what's your like pitch to them about the value of getting experience in as many fields as possible?
Yeah, for me, I think every sector teaches you something different, right? I mean, I think that if your passion is into work for a nonprofit because you have this need for impact, social impact, I encourage you to understand a little bit about business. This is what I encourage to my own daughter. Vice versa, if you're someone who's focusing on business, I encourage you to know more about the social sector. Encourage you to know more about social justice. Encourage you to know more about public service, right? I think here in America, we're going to be, I think in less than a year or so, we're going to experience what it's like to not have public servants. We'll feel it in our daily lives. So I encourage young people to really have this sort of multidisciplinary perspective, because life is never one thing. There are multiple aspects of our society that affect our lives. And the more you understand, the more you learn, the more you open your mind, I think the better human, the better human being you are, the better citizen you are. You don't have to be expert at all.
Mm-hmm.
You could be an expert in your field, but be open to learning about these other areas, because it really enriches your life.
Awesome. Many, especially young people, experience this situation where like they are part of an organization, part of an enterprise or social group, and they feel like their voice or they don't matter or their voice isn't heard or doesn't matter. Sometimes this is due to, like organizational structures. But sometimes it's also because of gatekeepers and stuff like that. And it is often frustrating, can also be discouraging. If we have someone in that position and you would like to tell them something about changing the mindset, or like how do we approach something like that, a situation like that where you are part of something bigger than you and you would like to see some change but your voice can't make it to the table?
The first, and I'll go back to the listening piece. As I grew in my career, the lesson that I've learned, the higher I get in sort of the corporate ladder, if we can call it that, the more I realize I listen more than I talk. The less you talk, when you do talk, the more influence you have. And I think all leaders will tell you that good leaders will never start first. They'll listen to everybody else and then they'll say something, right? As a young person, I think if you're just starting out in life, you're just starting out in your career, listen. But listening is not just an act of your ears, right? It's watching body language. You listen to with all your senses. The second thing I'll say is that people are more open to people they know. And so I think that part of what's challenging for young people, and sometimes it is intimidating, is that you walk into a room with people who may be older than you and who have more experience than you. Sometimes you want to show your experience. Don't. Like, you want to show what ideas you have. Don't. Right? Take a minute, right? Listen, learn, and use the opportunity to talk to people offline. You will have ideas that you share with people offline, and they begin to trust your instinct, your ideas, and they'll be the one to call on you. Right? Yes, Johnny, or you know what I mean? Like, oh, Isnal had this really great idea. Isnal, share it with the group. And because you have somebody who may be more senior than you calling on you and already validating your idea, all of a sudden, everybody else ears perk up, as opposed to, you've not made your mark yet. And yet you just I have great ideas. I want to share it. Yes, you probably do. Yes. But listen, you might learn something. You might learn something that changes your mind, or you might learn something that enhances the idea that you have. And secondly, talk to people offline, build a relationship, and then you'll find that your ability to talk at meetings and take your space will be easier than if you just try to force your way through.
This is wisdom. We can't get in books or in the classroom. um, what's your favorite quote? What's your favorite quote, Johnny?
Tout le monde c'est monde.
Tout
Tout le monde
Perfect.
c'est monde. Every person, everybody, every human being counts. Every
Yeah.
person is a person. Tout le monde c'est monde.
What is one recommendation that you could share with our audience? It could be a book, it could be a movie, an article, or anything. And why should they check it out?
If it's just one book, I mean, I have a lot of books. If you're Haitian,
Go ahead.
read Professor Doleon's book, and it will tell you my mindset, right? Help yourself, then help your country. It's about change yourself and change your country. It's about changing your mindset, and then you'll be able to change your country. I love the book, and he really laid out a lot of great ideas in there. I really love, Eric, How Rich Countries Got Rich and Why Poor Countries Stay Poor. Like, that's one of my favorite books that's really kind of transformed how I thought about sort of the economic side of the world, right?
Okay.
Of the issues. This book, like, Why Nation Fail, read Kwame Nkrumah. It's got like neocolonialism, the last stages of imperialism. It could be heavy. It's not the first one that I would start, but I think it's a book that you need to read. Read The Mystery of Capital. It's a book by Hernando de Soto. It really shows you sort of how property and money gets tied together to help build wealth and all that kind of stuff, and how it's the way that we, from way back, lock people out the opportunities to grow wealth. I read also Dambisa Moyo, Dead Aid. I like her book. She's a critic, and she's an economist and a critic of aid. I think it's a good book to read because it offers a different perspective. I don't agree with everything that she said, but I think it's important to read people that we disagree with. And so, there's a whole lot but again, Eric Reinhardt is one of those economists that I love listening to, and I love reading, how rich countries got rich and why poor countries stay poor, situate these issues that we face through a historical lens. And I always encourage Haitians to read it because we believe that everything was done against us because we're Black, because we're Haitian, because of 1804, because. And then I read this book and I'm realizing the strategies that the colonial powers use against us were the same strategies against each other, in the 16, 17, 1800s. So it's nothing new. Yes, there is a part of it that has to do with racism, but
Mm-hmm.
the strategies are not new strategies, and they were not just used against us only. They
Mm-hmm.
were not created
Mm-hmm.
for us. And so I encourage people to really read that because it reset your mind to not look at it and internalize it as, okay, it's just me. It's just, okay, this is what it is. We know the strategy. So now let's get beyond that. How do we, if
Mm-hmm.
we know the playbook, then we
Yeah,
can fight against it. But if you don't know the playbook, you don't know what you're fighting against.
that is true. Um, when when history looks back on this moment, what do you hope that it will remember of leaders like you?
That we did our part. That we didn't give up even when there was no hope. That we fought the good fight. Just, I'm not a big sports fan, but I would say we just left it all on the field, if I could say that.
Yeah, yeah, got it.
Because I
I'm
do believe
starting.
that we all have a responsibility. No, I was just going to finish to say that I do believe that all of us have a responsibility in our short moment on earth. I think the responsibility that we have is to leave this place better than we found it for the next generation. That's how mankind survives, right? Each generation leaves the place a little bit better than the previous one. So that's our response. I feel that's my responsibility.
Awesome. I mean, short story. I attended Paul Quinn College, HBCU in Dallas, and they have what we call the 4 L's of leadership, and one of them is leave places better than you found them. So thank you for this segue. I'm starting this sentence, and I would like you to finish it for me. If you are listening right now and wondering what your role is in this world, Johnny's challenge for you or Johnny's advice for you is
Stop waiting for someone else to give you a role. Claim your space. Continue learning to build your own capacity and serve your community. That is how change begins.
Johnny, thank you so much.
It's no, thank you. I really appreciated this conversation that we had. I wish we could have a 2-hour conversation, and hopefully we will have subsequent conversation. I wish you the best of luck with this new endeavor and all the success. And again, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. The pleasure was mine. Thank you, and talk to you soon.